Hey, we started another book, Devarim, Deuteronomy. Haftarah is also called Devarim, and that's Isaiah chapter 1, verses 1 through 27. Now, Isaiah was the prophet during the reign of 4 kings, including Hezekiah, king of Judah. And at this time, the southern kingdom had suffered many military defeats at the hands of their enemies, Aram and Assyria. And most of the cities of Judah had been attacked and destroyed, and at this time only Jerusalem remained. But Isaiah was warning of the coming destruction of Jerusalem and the temple if the hypocrisy and the apostasy and the corruption masquerading as piety, if that continued. And Isaiah was quick to point out that it's not too late to repent and to fix what was wrong. So let's talk about King Hezekiah for a minute. He actually made a lot of reforms related to the temple service, and he was instrumental in making sure that the Torah was being taught. But Isaiah has to tell him that all of that is meaningless if righteousness and justice do not also reign in the land. Now, righteousness and justice, those are 2 very loaded terms, and I would encourage you to do some studies on what those mean. We won't be able to go into all of that today, but I do want to encourage you to do that. It's very well worth it. I would also suggest Rico Cortez, his studies. He's got phenomenal studies on what righteousness and justice mean and how we can apply that to our lives today. He has a teaching called "What is Our Biblical Mandate?" And I got to tell you, it will change the way you do business, like do life. It's amazing. So, Psalm 89:14, it tells us that righteousness and justice are the foundation of God's throne. He is the epitome of righteousness and justice. And so, because that is who God is, that is the task of the king. So every king of Israel, being the representative of God, they had to act and behave with righteousness and justice. And if they did not, then as his representative, as his vassal king, we've talked about that before, what they actually do is shame God, the ultimate king. So if the vassals are not acting as representatives of the sovereign, the suzerain king, then the suzerain is shamed among the people. So that includes us, those of us who do not act with righteousness and justice. Because we're image bearers to God, the world knows God through us. And so if we're not practicing righteousness and justice, we bring God's name, his character, his worth to shame. Pretty serious, right? So this Haftarah tells us, like in no uncertain terms, that an outward show of piety without a heart of action of righteousness and justice, that those are going to be the cause for the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple. Pretty serious. So integrity, that's doing good when no one's watching, right? Righteousness, justice, that's what God wants. And Isaiah in this Haftarah tells us that God will purify Jerusalem by force if necessary. And that it is unjust, it is unrighteous, it is corrupt, it's a terrible condition for the city that was designed to be a blessing, right? Just like we, image bearers, were designed to be a blessing, Jerusalem as a city, the way it was supposed to be run, was supposed to be a blessing. And in the end, God, will purify his city. So Isaiah is describing this ruined and this desolate Jerusalem of future prophecy as a woman who is alone and helpless because her husband has left her, and therefore she goes into harlotry. There's basically there's nobody there to stand up for her and to plead her cause. And so what Isaiah is saying is this is measure for measure how Jerusalem treats its people, because the people are oppressing the poor, they're perverting justice. Well, at the same time, they're like going through the motions of religious observances. So they're not there for the oppressed, the widow, and the orphan. Therefore, Jerusalem will become that. So it's in this whole Haftarah, it's the hypocrisy that is behind the wording that God uses to depict Israel's festivals. Because it talks about I hate your festivals, and there's many detractors of Torah that will say, "Aha, see, God hates these festivals." But if you just look, you don't have to go very deep. He's saying, I hate your festivals, not his festivals, right? He didn't hate his feast days. What he hates is what the people have turned his feast days into, hypocrisy, right? So, and this is so sobering. He's saying that focusing on the outward expressions of these feasts, right? Getting all caught up in doing them the right way, but you're oppressing people, you're showing favoritism, you're not practicing righteousness and justice. That's what he hates. It's that religious veneer, I've heard it said, like a religious veneer, outward Torah observance in some areas that are easy to see. And my goodness, feast observances are easy to see, aren't they? But internally, they're morally corrupt and far from God. And last week, we talked about what it means to be far from God, right? So it's the religious hypocrisy, and that included correct religious rituals, correct feast days, while having a life of sin in the weightier matters. And I think that's sobering for the Hebrew roots movement, for the Messianic Torah observers. And the reason I say that is because let's face it, we have made a very outward showing of some of Torah, like almost a litmus test of real faith in God. Well, if you have real faith in God, you'll keep Sabbath. If you have real faith in God, you'll follow the feast days. And we always talk about the pendulum swinging too far one way, too far the other. It swung so far in one direction within Christianity that the feasts and Sabbaths, which are the things being talked about in this Torah portion, that's why I'm picking on them, so far this way, well, we don't need to be doing these things, and we shouldn't be doing these things. And so, yes, we needed to swing it back the other way. But somewhere we got to get in the middle, right? And I think that's what Isaiah is. At least that's what I got out of this particular Haftarah. We can't be focusing only on these outward shows of piety, as if those were the weightier things. Now, if you know me at all, you know that I've been guarding the feasts and Sabbath since the early 2000s, and I don't plan on changing that at all. Hope to get better at it, in fact. And that's why this Haftarah is really sobering to me, because Isaiah warns us that it's easy to have this religious veneer that covers over a lack of righteousness and justice. Now, again, go study those terms. We need to talk about righteousness and justice. I think this Haftarah is telling us we need to talk about those things more than anything else. And we need teachers of righteousness and justice, right? We need mentors to help us apply Torah to today's world. Like, for example, one example, what would be some modern day a modern day equivalent of leaving gleanings in your field for the poor. You round the corners of your field, you leave the gleanings, right? Are we excused from this doing good because we don't have a literal field, right? And my question is, who's talking about this in our movement? Or are we stuck on that pendulum that we're trying to swing back? Maybe that's the wrong pendulum, So this Haftarah teaches that you can have right sacrifices, you can have the correct mounts, you can do the feast days, you can do them on the right days, you can do it with a wrong heart. Now we in this movement give we often say, we don't like that phrase, well, God knows my heart. But maybe we need to pay more attention to that. I know I do. Many Christians do get it wrong on the feast days and the Sabbaths. That's true. But many times they have it more together when it comes to righteousness and justice, taking care of the oppressed, the widow, and the orphan. My question that this Haftarah spurred was, why aren't we talking about that more? Why aren't we doing more with the weightier matters? And I think that we in the Torah movement have to do better. I know I have to do better. I can't neglect the weightier matters of the law. Matthew 23 says, woe to you, scribes, Pharisees, hypocrites! You tithe mint and dill and cumin, but you've neglected the weightier provisions of the law, justice and mercy and faithfulness. But these are the things you should have done without neglecting the others. Now that's important, without neglecting the others. We need to add, right? Justice, mercy, faithfulness. These are the true measures of godly obedience. And they mean more than what we think they mean. Skip Moen says, here's his quote, to do justice is to act toward others in ways that glorify God, account for the dignity he placed in mankind, and redeem the earth so that it reflects the values of heaven. I mean, we could just take that statement right there and unpack that for a couple of hours, right? Act toward others in ways that glorify God, account for the dignity that he placed in mankind, and redeem the earth so that it reflects the values of heaven. Is that what we're paying attention to? I don't know. I think we need more education on how to do those things, not another Passover recipe. And I'm speaking for myself here. So, showing mercy is setting aside my rights and my agenda so that others can prosper under God's care and provision. Well, what if my agenda is, I want you to think the way that I think? And what if I bully somebody into that? Is that righteousness and justice? There's a lot more to being faithful to Torah than just how you party, I guess. In the Haftarah, starting at verse 16, it says, where do you go from here? How do you rectify this? Wash and make yourself clean. Take your evil deeds out of my sight. Stop doing wrong. Learn to do right. Seek justice. Defend the oppressed. Take up the cause of the fatherless. Plead the case of the widow. That was sobering. So stop doing wrong. Okay. I think a lot of us in this movement are doing pretty well with that. We're stopping the doing wrong. Learn to do right. Replace bad habits with doing good. That's the part that I wonder about. Because it's one thing to avoid doing wrong, but are we doing good when it comes to righteousness and justice? caring for the oppressed, the widow, the orphan, the poor, the disenfranchised? Are we actively seeking that out? And what does that look like to actively seek that out? Do we wait till opportunities come to us? Do we seek it out? We need mentors in this area. So these are the things that I've been pondering because of this Haftarah. And I invite you to ponder these with me. So I absolutely welcome your comments below in this lesson, and we can kind of reason these things out together. And I'll see you in the next Haftarah.